Hello! Welcome to class. Today we are going to talk about brush tips. Now I have, let's call it 10 for now. I have 10 brush tips that will, change everything about your brushes, because I have watched and I have observed so many people doing so many tiny little things that just destroy their brushes. So I thought that I would finally put together a video that really talks about what to do and what not to do, because there are some pretty huge no-nos when it comes to brush care. So I made a list. Please excuse me for reading off the list. It's going to be so much easier. I have 10 absolutes, and I will throw in a few bonus tips at the end. Now let me start by saying that for all of my videos you can go to the timestamps. You'll find it down below in the description, and there you can jump through and just go ahead and watch anything. So you don't have to watch this video from front to back. Jump to the end, jump to the middle, whatever you want. This is with all of my videos. There's always going to be timestamps everywhere, so it makes it easier, and that way you don't have to sit here for who knows how long this is going to end up being. So my list, let's start at number 1. Number 1, you go to a lovely craft store or an art supply store and you buy a brush, and you bring the brush home and you unpackage it and you're like, hey, why is it rock hard? What's up with that? Okay. It's full of gum arabic. That is why it is hard. In fact, it could even be solid. Now you might find that some of the brushes are crispy and hard, but they're still pretty soft. And other brushes might be really hard. I mean, this one, you could stab somebody with this one. This is intense. So what's in here is gum arabic. It comes like this. It can also come in larger bottles and smaller bottles, but it's a clear, yellowy mixture, and it comes from a tree. So it's completely vegan, and it will not kill you if you lick it. Gum arabic is used in a lot of cooking. It's in a lot of food. But I wouldn't recommend it. That is one of my tips. Don't lick your brush, but we'll get to that later. Okay, so gum arabic was in here. Now what you want to do, and I don't actually want to break this because I don't use this brush very often, so let's find a brush that I do want to get the arabic out. So here we go. It's nice and hard, and it's actually starting to fray a little bit on the edges because I've been moving it around too much. So what you want to do is very simple. Get some water. Make sure it's clean. Doesn't have to be clean, but kind of makes sense. Get a towel, okay? You can use paper towel, but for the sake of being environmentally friendly, let's go with a normal everyday towel, preferably an old one that you have gotten permission if it's not your own, and you've designated as your painting towel. Now you want to take your brush and put it into the water and just move it around. I realize that if you're going to sit there and do this, it'd be like, oh boy, because you might be moving that brush around for a good 5 minutes. Just put it in there for a few seconds, wiggle it around, take it out, and put it on your cloth. Now let it sit there, let the water go in, let it moisten, okay, and soften up. And about 5 minutes later, you might take it out and say, okay, let's shake it again. Let's leave it for a little while. Ooh, it's working. Now this one went really fast. I mean, this is like 20 seconds. Okay, and it is fully soft, which is lovely. And now, just for fun of it, I'm going to make sure I've got all that gum arabic out of there. I don't have to, it's really not important, but if you want to not have the problem of having this happen again, because if you leave some gum arabic in your brush, it will stiffen up again. So now the brush is all nice and hard, and I can go ahead and work with it. Okay, so that is tip number 1. When you get your brush, or tip number 1 more specifically, is when you get your brush and you're concerned or wondering why the brush is hard, and you're like, oh, no problem, I'll just... Don't do that. There's a lot of don'ts in this video. In fact, I think all 13 of these, well, all 10 of these, except a few are don'ts. Do not break or twist or bend or try to pop out the gum arabic. Do not do that. Use water, always, 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 and wash it out. Now the reason is if you have a brush that's really, really hard, like say this one that is so hard that it actually is kind of painful, if I push it into my hand, I could break these bristles. I could completely break and destroy these bristles. The point will never be a point again if I was to crack it. Also, the gummy art goes all the way down the bottom. I might even mess it up with the glue down here. It's just all around bad. Do not crack your brushes. Okay, so we've tackled number 1. Yay! Let's pass on. Let's move on to the next one. Number 2. Do not use hot water, or even warm water for that matter. When you are getting water, this one has a little bit of blue in it, and that's on purpose. You guys can see the blue actually water in there. And I like to paint with a little bit of color in the water, just so that you guys can see where the water goes on the paper. But when you have your water, get a nice big container. I like to use 2 at once, so I have a dirty water and clean water. That way, my brush that's dirty always goes in the dirty water. Then I wipe it off. Then I get clean water. And then I go back to my painting. So my clean water never gets dirty, and my dirty water stays dirty. Okay, but tip number 2 is make sure your water, all the waters that you use, are going to be cold to cool. Your brush is made up of multiple parts, and in the middle here, that is where the bristles are glued in to the handle and this middle piece, which I don't remember at the moment, but I'll put it in there. Okay, so the bristles have been glued in, and when you put this into hot water, you are going to, over time, maybe not right away, although if it's not a good quality brush, it could happen pretty quickly, but you're going to loosen the glue of your bristles. And what that is going to do is, well, your brush is going to fall apart. So tip number 2, do not use hot or even warm water. Only use cool water so that your brush bristles stay in your brush. You want that glue to always stay gooey. Nice and strong. Okay, tip number 4. Now this is a real doozy. For some reason, I don't know why, but there's a whole slew of people out there that just seem like this is okay. So for tip number 4, I'm going to use a child's set of brushes. These are my children-in-law's brushes, and I keep them separate on purpose so that they're not using mine. I would never, ever, ever in a million years do this with one of my brushes. Oh my goodness, it's going to be ruined. Okay, you never, tip number 4, very simple, never, ever, 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 ever leave your brush like this. Not even for 2 seconds. Do not do it. When you bring that brush out, ugh, look at that point. It's all bent. Now, okay, it might not happen right away, and this is a pretty good quality brush. So it's also a synthetic brush, and it's very strong, so it does come back to a point, which is why I've got it for my children-in-law, because they destroy brushes. So do not clean your brush and leave it in the water and walk away. Don't even leave it in the water. Put your brush in the water, take it out, put it on a towel, dry it off, and leave it flat. It's not too much to ask. This poor little brush is here to help you on your watercolor journey. It is your friend. It is a lovely brush. It is a wonderful brush. It wants to make beautiful pictures with you. It's not going to do anything if you keep doing that. It's going to get depressed, it's going to get sad, it's going to get sluggish, it's going to feel used, it's going to start peeling. It's just not nice, okay? Now there's not a lot of water in here, but if this was all the way up to here, for example, in water, or any of this was in water, this part, depending on the quality of the brush, but definitely, over time, it would definitely happen. You know, if my children-in-laws come along and they leave their brushes in here and go have dinner, by the time they come back, all of this varnish is cracked. In fact, I can also already see it cracking. There's a lot of cracking going on here. And this is a high-quality brush. Anyway, so it will crack, and eventually it'll peel off, and it will look horrible. So if you see anybody online, another tutorial where somebody's like, yeah, I've got this awesome brush, look, it fell apart. Yeah, why? Because you left it in water. Like, that's what happens. Or you got it wet. Don't even get it wet. The water, when you put your brush into water, it should never go past the piece of metal on your brush. Never, ever, ever, okay? You only want it to be up here. And really, you don't even want the water to go into the metal part either, because that's where your glue is, and you want your glue to stay nice and firm and happy and gluish and not get wet. You don't want the water to get in there. So another thing, this is still tip number 4, but another thing is, let's say you put your brush in the water and then you dry it like this. You know, stand it up Like if I threw this right back in here. Voila. Now can we guess what the problem is? I'm sure you guys know by now. Okay, the water is gonna seep through and into the glue, and you're gonna have the same problem. So now you've got a brush. Let's just not do that. Shake that water back out of there. Okay, so now you've got a brush where the water is getting down in here, and as you're using it, you will very likely find that a few of the bristles are falling out. Now, I do have to put in a disclaimer here. Good brushes don't fall apart, crappy ones do. If you find a brush at the dollar store, if you find a brush just about any store that looks crappy or crummy and you come home, you think it's amazing, you put it in water and it falls apart, there's a good chance you get what you pay for, okay? If you're gonna go with something like a Da Vinci brush, you're gonna have a good quality brush. Even on their student lines, it's still gonna be a good quality brush because it is a good quality everything. I mean, they just make beautiful brushes, okay? But if you're using Artisti is also a very good brand. I love both of them. And also Aniki. But I believe that most of my brushes that you're seeing here are all Da Vinci or Artisti. And both of those are really high quality brushes. Now they have professional lines and they also have student lines, and I only buy the student line for my children-in-law. And there's a very simple tip, which I guess I should throw in as a bonus tip because I do not have it written down. But you can normally, just off the top of just looking around here off the top of my head, if you take a look at brushes, if they're yellow, if they're a natural honey stain versus an actual stain of any kind, a dark stain, a wood. I'm only talking wood here. I'm not talking about when they go solid and black, because that's a whole nother category of brushes. But the natural honey versus the darker woods are always more expensive. And I challenge you guys to go check that out. Now, if you find something at the dollar store that's completely different, that doesn't count. I'm talking like a good line of paints. So these are all Da Vinci's. No, these are Da Vinci's and these are Artisti's. So for example, the Sable Kalinsky brushes, which are also made by Da Vinci and a few others, because that's a type of hair that lots of manufacturers use, they have beautiful, really dark handles. And then you get all the way down into the lighter handles and you're getting into thin synthetic brushes. So you can always, not always, but so it's a good idea when you're shopping around to pay attention to the colors of the handles as well as the bristles. Now that's not 100%. You'll find plastic handles, which I don't agree with because we've got enough plastic in our world. But it's just a side note just for fun. Okay, so back to our track here. Number 5. Tip number 5. Use soap. Use soap with your masking fluid. So I recently put up a video about masking fluid and I went through and there's a bunch of my masking fluids. This one is a Frisket fluid. These two are masking fluids. Schminky fluid. This is from Winsor & Newton. This is Schminky as well. There are other brands. There's tons of brands. I only use high quality professional products, brushes, paints, palettes, anything. I use all the pro stuff, but I do this professionally, so I guess there's a reason why that is. I don't have any student grade. Now, I'm sure in the student grade world there's a lot of other brands you could also choose from, but we're talking about brushes, not masking fluid. I do have a full tutorial on masking fluid. Here's the deal. You can use your brushes with masking fluid, but I wouldn't do it unless you know what you're doing, okay? My masking fluid brush is in this little guy. Is this one. Is this teeny tiny little brush. And I can see that it does have a little bit of gook on the end because it doesn't always come out. So I can pull that off a bit. But this is the brush that I use for my masking fluid. Now, the tip for using masking fluid and brushes is that you need soap. This is a bar of soap. Put a little bit of water on that soap. Move it around. Okay? So you've got soap all over your brush. Now you can dip it into your masking fluid and go ahead and use it on. Don't take the soap out. Leave it in there. I know that sounds weird. Just put on just a tiny bit of soap and go ahead and paint. And then come back, wash it off, rinse it well, give it a good shake. Go on the edge. Don't drop it into the bottom because that'll ruin your brushes. They'll get very upset and they won't paint well anymore. Okay, so come back, get a little more soap, and then go to your masking fluid again. So however times you need to use masking fluid, keep doing that. Make sure that you take only a little bit of masking fluid on the end of your brush, and that you are continuously washing it off and going back, because the moment that masking fluid dries, and it dries really quickly, the moment it dries on your brush, even though you've got soap on there, you could be doomed. So the soap will help as long as the masking fluid is still wet. Yeah. Now the other option is don't use it at all. Use something like, the back of a brush or a shape tool. I have one back there, and I wanted to mention, just as a total side note, shape tools do not last very long. The plastic or the rubber on the end of the shape tool, it kind of breaks down, decomposes, and turns into plastic, sticky plastic. If you've ever had plastic, I mean, this happens to everything. This is one of the reasons why I don't have any plastic in our house, as much as it is possible to not have plastic around. But plastic, it likes to gooey up. You know, I had a coffee cup once that had a plastic lid, and after a year of using it almost every day, I turned it over one day, and I mean, I cleaned it every day and everything, and I always noticed it was fine. And it was sticky on the edge, and I was like, that's disgusting. So it had started to break down, which, if you know anything about plastic and health, I'm sure you know that I'm probably full of cancer now, because that was a bad thing to do. Speaking of cancer and brushes, and I'll just jump forward here, tip number something. Okay, so we're going to drop this in as tip number 6, even though it's not technically tip number 6. This will be a bonus tip. 6 plus bonus. Do not lick your brushes. Don't do it. It's bad. Okay? I recently saw somebody licking their brush. She had a travel brush. This is a lovely travel brush, and she was like, lick the brush and stick it in. She goes, well, I'm just going to lick it so it'll all go together and come to a nice point and stick it in. Do not lick your brushes. It doesn't matter if they're travel brushes. It doesn't matter if they're clean brushes. It doesn't matter if they're used brushes. What we put, I mean we as a society, and have always, I mean all the way back to the caveman times, we've always been using paint, and we have used forever and ever and ever things like burnt bones, okay, oil from animals. There are crushed bugs in here. Lots of blues have crushed bugs in them. A lot of these things have some seriously crazy chemicals. Some of these colors are pure chemicals. It's just a chemical reaction that creates a color, and then from that color they add things like gum arabic and honey and a few other ingredients. Honey, not in the synthetic world, but if you made it by yourself, you could. And traditionally they used to add honey. So paints are carcinogenic. Paints will give you cancer. Do not eat them, okay? I'm not saying that you're going to die if you nibble on your brush, but I am saying if you're remotely healthy, if you're into being healthy or staying healthy, and if you have children and you watch your children do this, tell them, you know, if you're concerned about their health, don't eat the paint. It doesn't have lead in it, but it's not much better. I mean, So let's just take it down a bit here. I know these are a lot of don'ts. I'm very sorry. Maybe I should flip them around and say, do eat your food, but not your paint. I don't know. Okay, number 6. Are we on 6 or are we on 7? Well, number 6 that wasn't the tip 6 was clean your brushes. Clean your brushes. So let's go through that. That's nice and simple. Brushes, somehow. I mean, I teach watercolor, and I've had classes for years and years, and I've been in classes, and I've got lots of friends who come over, and we have big watercolor parties where we all sit around and do watercolor, and nobody ever cleans their brushes. What's with that? These people never clean, at least not in front of me. They never. Now, if you have makeup brushes, do you clean your makeup brushes? I mean, somehow that seems to be different. Like, we do clean our makeup brushes, right? You get the soap, you put it in your hand, you add some water, you come back, you go round and round and round, lather up the soap a little bit, then do it directly in your hand. Try not to squish it out, but just go back and forth and back and forth. Add some water. And you don't have to do this in the bathroom. Like, just do it wherever. Do it right here in your art room. Okay, so my brushes aren't dirty. Why? Because I cleaned them. Which is why my hand is staying nice and clean. But that's it. That's as simple as it is to clean your brush. A little bit of soap, a little bit of water, and you're done. Rinse it out, dry it off on a towel. Okay, now if you want, this is tip number something or another, I'll have to tell you now since I'm holding it in my hand. This is a travel brush. If you want to close a travel brush, dip it in water, dry it off on a towel. It's just a light dry. Take your hands and form it into a point, not your tongue. Okay, form it into a point. Turn it around, and then go doo-doo-doo. Finito. Look at that. Shall I do it again? Maybe we should replay. You simply form it into a point. There you go, nice point. Make sure you're not even forming into a point. You're just making sure that all the bristles are going in the right direction and they're all together. Now, there's this lovely thing on the end of just about every travel brush that exists. I can't imagine not having it. And if you don't have a little hole at the end of your travel brush, don't buy it because that's a bad idea. This little hole at the end of the travel brush will guarantee that as long as you didn't put a sopping wet brush in there, that it's going to dry. It's going to air out. You're not leaving it out in the sun. You're not putting it in the freezer. It's going to air out. It's okay. Don't lick your brush. Put it in water. Squish it out with your hands. Form a point. Put it in. Super simple. All right, tip number 7. Or I guess 8 because we just did 10 as 7. So let's go with tip number 8. This is funny. Okay, tip number 8. Boil the ends to straighten them out. Now, I don't mean boil like putting them into a pot of water and letting the whole water boil. Okay, so what I mean is get a kettle, fill it with water, have it boil. Pour it into a mug or a container, whatever you want. Dip the brush into the water. Now, let's use this as an example because you can see. Just dip it a little bit, okay? Do not dip it where the glue is. You don't want to heat that glue up. You just want to dip the brush, the bristles or the hairs at the very, 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 very end of the brush. So stay away from this part because this part is going to be full of glue, and if you do it too far, your glue is going to come out and your brush will be ruined. Don't go anywhere near this part, your handle, because you will crack, it will crack and lift and be nasty and it will fall apart and your brush will be ruined. But if you dip just the brush bristles into boiling water, there's a good chance that just like ironing them out, if they have, and you know what, you could probably iron them too. I haven't thought about that, but that is an option. On an extremely low setting and staying far away from the glue, you could probably, maybe with a hair iron, hair straightener. That is a very good idea. I have not done it, so please don't hold me to it, but I shall try that if I find any brushes that ever need to be straightened, because that would work, I think. Yeah, just dip it in, and then the bristles should straighten. They should relax and be straight. Okay. I don't know how many times I said that. Sorry. Let's get back to the point here. Now, tip number 8. Are we on 8 or are we on 9 now? I think we're on 9. Okay. Tip number 9, dry storage. Don't let them freeze. Don't bake your brushes in the sun, and be nice to your brushes. Do you want to bake in the sun every day? No, you do not. Are you going to be happy if you lie outside and bake in the sun? No, you are not. Do your brushes like to go in the freezer? No, they do not. I don't know why, but for some reason that seems like an okay thing. Throw your brushes in the freezer. It's not an okay thing. And by that, I mean, don't leave it in a freezing car, and don't leave your brushes in a baking car, because again, the glue will melt or expand and crack. Your brushes will go, everything will be bad, okay? Most brushes are made of living hair, living as in once living hair from an animal, etc. Perhaps from a human if you've made your own brush for using your hair. But most brushes, the hair on the brushes, they want to stay nice and safe and natural. They want to live in an environment that you live in, okay? They don't want to live in a super, super dry environment. They don't want to live in the desert. And, I mean, how does your hair look if you walk through a desert? It's like, ugh. And yet, how does your hair look on a totally misty, rainy, wet day? Same thing, okay? So think of your hairstyle and it going all wacky. Your brushes are kind of the same. They want neutral, comfortable, temperate conditions. Do not leave them in the sun. I don't know how many times I have told students not to leave their brushes in the sun. And something as simple as just laying your brush out and getting up and going away for a few hours. I don't know why you would do that, but maybe you're working at a table and the sun is coming across and the table's inside, so it's not technically in the weather, but the sun is now on your brush. And by the time you come back, your brush is super hot because it's heated up from the sun, your glue is melted, and next time you use it, your bristles are falling out. Let's just go with that. Not a good idea, okay? Now, tip number 10. Ah, yes, I love this one. This one is the ultimate in brush ruiners. These tiny little plastic guys, I think they sell this, or I think these come with brushes, so that we can ruin our brushes. Now, this is my masking fluid brush, and I will wet it. And then I will attempt to put it on like so. If you were good at doing this, if you were comfortable doing this, if you don't care about the brush and you think it doesn't matter, if you ruin the brush, you ruin the brush. And really, if it's a super tiny brush, like the one I have here is a 02 and this is a 0, fine. Use the plastic protectors. Okay. If it's anything else, if you're not comfortable, if you're not sure, if it doesn't work for you, don't use them because they are brush destroyers. They are secretly, that's their purpose. Their purpose is to destroy brushes. So you get this in there and you're like not sure and you end up bending one of those bristles backwards or you whatever, and that brush is ruined. So take these little guys, and unless you want to use them for stamping or in arts and crafts or in some kind of Lego creation, or you want to do like a recycled big model-y thing and this is your little chimney on top, whatever, use it for something else, but do not use them on your brushes. Get rid of it, okay? Maybe not on the floor because my cat might eat it now. I'm going to have to pick it up. Get rid of the plastic tubes. Okay, tip number 11. How to close a travel brush. Well, I already did that, didn't I? So let's skip past that one and go to the next one. Carrying case options, good versus bad. Just like anything, your brushes need to be protected. This is a carrying case. You could call it a pencil case if you wanted to. I don't have any really bad carrying cases because why would I, right? I just don't. But I would say that one where it's soft. I would avoid a pencil case where it's soft, especially if the ends are soft. I don't like the idea of the ends bunching in and knocking on your brush. Now, I like to put my brushes with something squishy and soft underneath and on top, and then so that they're going to be protected from knocking around. I want to also keep the actual handles safe, not just the bristles. But the big thing for me is when I open it, so that I don't carry it upside down, I open it like a book. So that means that this is up and this is down. And that way, no matter where it is, I know, oh, that's the correct way to hold it. This is always going to be up. Now, I have also put little arrows on it to say up, or like a little sticker or something on the top side. So when I put it in my bag, it always goes in the right direction. Just put that back in there. So that's one option. It's a little tinny container. I recommend something hard. Another option that is much bigger would be something like this. Now, this is holding a bunch of my brushes, my pencils, not all of them by any means, but a bunch of them. This one is fun. It's wooden, yeah, no plastic needed. The top just kind of snaps on if you watch. It goes snappity snap. There's two magnets that pull it together. Again, I know the top is always here because, oh, that's where it goes. Exactly. But this can be heavy. It's not. It's heavy when it's full, but it's not particularly heavy. I believe it's made of bamboo. And I really like it. There's nothing on it. This one came from Brosner. I believe they make them themselves, but there are lots of companies that will sell you wooden cases. And as you can see behind me, I love wooden cases for just about everything. The wooden case will also keep the moisture on the inside more stable. It'll regulate a little bit. It's not going to get too moist in there. It's not going to get too hot, because the wood's going to suck out and keep that moisture better. But that's just another option. Okay, my third option is what I always think of as a sushi roll. It is not a sushi roll. I did buy it at an art store, my wholesale art store, which I love to go to, and Yeah, the only thing that I don't like about this one is you can get them with the little pockets already sewn in, and the day that I went and had to get one, they didn't have the pockets. So there's no pockets. It really is like a sushi roll, except with a tie. That's the difference. Okay, so this one's really easy. You just throw in your brushes and you roll them up. And voila, you roll them up. I didn't do that very tight, but anyway, twist it, and then stick this little tool in here, shove it in anywhere you want, okay, and that's going to keep them nice and straight. Now, this does have some benefits because there is no fabric in there. It's going to keep it perfectly straight without having the fabric possibly bunch up and mess up your brushes. The only thing that's not so much fun is when you open this, now your brushes are floating around. So if you had 20 or 30 brushes, it would be like, wee, and they're all falling out and all over the place. So I don't mind this for super long things. Like if I'm going to go to Canada or to America, then I will totally take this because I can roll it up. It's really light. It's also made of bamboo. I'll roll it up, throw it in my travel bag, in my luggage, preferably my carry-on, because I can't live without my paint, so if they get stuck in my checked luggage and they disappear, that would be really bad. But I know that they're going to be safe during my trip. And then when I get to wherever I'm going, I would use something like this, or, you know, if I was going to walk around, I would use something smaller. But maybe if I had a whole bunch, this would be good, and then just take what I need for the day on my little travel container. So those are 3 examples of what I would suggest for transporting your brushes. My 4th option is travel brushes. If you want to travel, get some travel brushes. These travel brushes, I have 4 in a set. And I only have 3 with me at this exact moment, but they're all part of the same set. I don't think they don't actually tell me who made them. So, but you can find these online. There are lots of companies that make travel brushes. They are really, really awesome and extremely high quality. I have heard a few people say things like travel brushes aren't very good, they're not really high quality, you can't really use them. It depends on the brush. So I will look up the name of these. I'm pretty sure they're made by Da Vinci because everything I use tends to be Da Vinci. That's my favorite brush company. But these are extremely, extremely good quality brushes. They're also 20 bucks. This is 20 euros for the big one, and I believe it goes down. There's one I'm missing here. Let me show you the sizes. I also like that they kind of squish together. They don't have they don't unscrew because that's annoying. So this is a 4, an 8, and is this a 12 in the middle? Oh, I use it too often. The numbers rubbed off. I believe that's a 12. 4, 8, and a 12. They come to beautiful points. There we go. So, the 4, the 8, and the 12, and there's another one that goes in here, and I think it's a 6. And these are awesome. I highly recommend travel brushes. Like I said, Da Vinci is my favorite, but there are some other companies that also make them, and I will look these up and put it in the information below just to be sure, so you guys can check out what they are. Maybe I can even find them on Amazon, and then you guys can click on the link and get them there if you want. Okay, so the very last tip I have for you today is to use a mixing brush. Now, it's a lot easier, obviously, to work with the brush that you're working with if you have limited brushes, and if they're not high quality brushes and you just don't care, that's fine. But these tips, these 13 tips, are really about buying, having, using high quality brushes that you want to maybe will to your great-grandchildren. And you can do that. Brushes can be very expensive. For example, some of the Kolinsky Scable brushes range in price all the way up to 200 or 300 euros. So there's nothing cheap in the world of brushes. You can obviously get cheap brushes, but they don't have to be cheap. So part of extending the life of your brush is not always using it. And what I mean by that, because that might sound a little weird, is when you're mixing your colors, it can be quite aggressive. You know, you're pulling a color here and you're mixing it up there, and maybe the paints are not as wet as they could be, which is also a good tip, is when you want to mix your brushes and your palettes, spray it all down first. Spray everything down first and let it sit for a few minutes, so that when you are coming to mix with your brush, you just have to touch it and it's already going to be nice and wet, and you're not rubbing it and rubbing it and rubbing it and like lifting it up the same way you would maybe to lather up some soap. It's really not the way you want to interact with your paint. We will get into paints. I have a tutorial coming on how to extend the life of your paints and how to use them in a more graceful way as well. But for now, we're talking about brushes. So if you wet the paints beforehand, you're able to lift it up without destroying your brush. You may have noticed that I tend to paint with 2 brushes. So it's actually 3. One, I'll do the mixing and then I'll leave that over here, so the mixing brush stays with the paints. But then I'll have 2 brushes, and I do this a lot, where I have one brush for details, and I will be doing my details and laying on my paint, and then I'll come with a second brush and I'll add in the water. Okay, so the water is smoothing it out and the paint, and that way I'm not lifting paint, putting it down, taking it off, getting water, putting that on, lifting more paint, putting it on, washing it off. Because what I'm essentially doing is taking it from the palette, take the paint, put it on my paper a little bit, put the paint into my water. So I'm really dumping the paint in my water, like it just, no. So what I like to do is then have water on one brush and paint on the other, and that way I'm able to also extend the life of my brush. Perhaps the water brush is not the most amazing brush either, and the detail brush is the really awesome brush that I want to make sure is going to last for a long, long time. And my mixing brush can be anything. Now, obviously, none of the brushes, I would never recommend having a brush where the bristles fall out. That being said, it can be a lesser quality brush as long as the bristles don't fall apart and it's not literally coming off. There are times when brushes literally fall apart. The handle to the top just falls apart. I will give you a little story here. When I was younger, I had a little sister, and she would drop her brushes into her paint, like so. I told her that a brush is like a ballerina, and this is her foot, okay? The ballerina never stands flat foot. And if she did, it just wouldn't be right, because she's a ballerina. And what she does it all on her toes. A brush is the same thing. You want to keep that brush on its tippy toes. So also when you're painting, if you're trying to teach a child how not to destroy their brushes, don't do that. Don't squish it around and destroy your brush. And if you do, try to pull it back and work it back into the right shape as soon as possible. But instead, keep your brush on its toes, and it will dance and laugh and sing and be a very, very happy brush for you. I hope that you enjoyed this little video. I know it wasn't so little, but don't forget you can always go back and check out the timestamps. If you missed anything, you want to go back and look at it again. It's good. All the information is going to be down below in the details. But I hope that you enjoyed this little chit-chat about brushes and how to take care of them and how to overall extend the life of your brushes. I do hope that you find in the future that your brushes will be a little more happy for you if any of these things are new to you. And if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. I've got lots of cool stuff coming. I know I spoke really, really fast during this video. That's because it's 25 minutes long and I want to get as much out as I can without taking up so much of your time. I hope to see you in the next video, and have a wonderful day, and keep painting, guys. Toodaloo.